Hello and welcome to episode 57 of the Virtual Velo Podcast with me, Emma Martin, and my co-host, Chris Schwenker. Now, Chris, you and I are both back from Abu Dhabi, you respectively to the United States, me to the UK. How was your flight?
How was the flight? I'm still recovering from the flight. I'm going to tell you the truth. It was brutal. 15 hours in the flying tin can is not for me. I'm old and I have a heart condition, so it was very difficult. But no, it was worth the trip, and it was truly an epic event. And the racing was incredible. Everything else around the event also was just a very memorable experience. But I think the thing that I'll remember most is the relationships that we made there. And I had the opportunity to meet you, and we had a couple dinners, and got to know your co-commentator, Matt, and it was really great. And I also had a really special connection with a family member of our guests, and I'm looking forward to bringing that out as well.
Well, we can talk long flights, but I'm not sure anybody had a longer flight than our guest today to get to Abu Dhabi, and we might have to ask her. But welcome to the Virtual Velo Podcast, the 2024 UCI Cycling Esports World Champion. Well, it is the one and only Kate McCarthy. Welcome, Kate.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh, it's so good to have you with us today. Now, I have to indulge a question to start with, and I've sort of sidelined Chris a little bit with this because after the World Championships, I saw you in a bike shop in Abu Dhabi. Now, as a world champion, did you buy anything in the bike shop? That's what I want to know.
I did. I actually got a new set of power pedals, which I desperately needed. So that was first on the list.
Fabulous. I love that. I was like, oh my goodness me, there's a world champion cyclist in the bike shop. What could they possibly be buying? Well, now I know. Thank you so much. Oh, Kate, is this your first interview since leaving the venue and securing that word title?
It is.
Yeah, that's interesting because I'm always curious as to what level of interest the esports world champions have after winning the titles. You know, it's obviously the most prestigious title you can win in our sport, and it kind of gauges where the sport is going. So no reach out from Cycling New Zealand or any other media outlets or even cycling teams.
No, I think I've had we have a small
Nothing.
We have a small news article here, but other than that, and that was like a small little write-up, but other than that, no, nothing.
Well, I think there's an opportunity there. Any journalist in New Zealand at the moment listening to the podcast, get on the phone to Kate, get that article written and get it out there.
Well, I look forward to the time when we have to wait online, Emma, for these athletes to come speak with us. But it is an honor, and I do appreciate you joining us as the first interview. It means a lot. It really does.
So, Kate, since winning that rainbow jersey, is it business as usual for Kate McCarthy since you've returned home? Or has it changed anything that you've been doing?
So far, no, nothing's changed. It was just good to get home. It was a disaster of a time with airports and delays and lost bikes and all sorts getting home. So once I finally got home, no, things have been pretty well back to same old. Back to work today, actually, later today. So yeah.
So you're back to work today, and did you just hear you say you had a lost bike on the way back?
Yeah, so I initially had delayed flights and then cancelled flights and then finally got on the flight home, and then I must have been 40 hours post leaving Abu Dhabi, and then got to the airport and they said, oh, your bike's not on this flight. And it was luckily on the next one after, so we waited an extra 5 or 6 hours at the airport just to get the bike after landing, and then finally made it home.
Oh my goodness, they didn't make that easy for you, did they?
No, not at all.
So I'm assuming I'm toying up. I mentioned the rainbow jersey. You have every reason, Kate, to be really proud of your accomplishment. And I know someone who couldn't hide his pride whenever anybody bumped into him in Abu Dhabi, and that was your dad. The two of you travelled together to the World Championships, and he made the trip with you.
Yes, well, he was on a separate flight, funny enough, on the way over, but no, he was awesome there. It was really, really special to have him there and to win it with him there. I didn't hear a word from him during the racing, but I heard some phone recordings afterwards, and I could definitely hear his voice in the background.
So has he become a fan of cycling esports then?
Yes. Over the last few months he has. So he's been actually most Sunday race clubs he's turned up at 9 o'clock at night, and he's standing right beside me cheering me on even for those races. So yeah, to have him there was awesome.
I'll tell you a really funny story. When I entered the venue, I was with the press tour, so we were there way ahead, even before the racers. And obviously I had journalistic duties, but primarily in my mind, I was there to be a fan. I was a fan of you guys. I wanted to see the races. It's been a long time coming, and it was really going to be an epic event, and I wanted to witness it in the crowd with everybody else. So I dropped my stuff off at the closest chair I could, and then I went backstage and did what I had to do. And I ran out right before the race, and I sit down next to this very distinguished looking gentleman. And I turned to him and I kind of nod, and I'm thinking of that he's going to say to me, "Listen, guy, you left your crap here." And I had to walk around it. He turns to me and he says, "Your podcast is brilliant." And I was just kind of like floored. I was blown away. And I think I turned to him and I said, "So you're the one who listens." And then it turns out that it was Kate's dad who was sitting right next to me. And it ended up really being a special moment because I was able to watch you race almost through his eyes. And we were speaking back and forth and talking about the pride that he has for you. And it was really, really special. But as you raise your arms in victory and got back to the seat to do a little of writing, and then you came back there, and it was really nice. The three of us, we got a picture, and I told you that I was going to be saving a question for you, and I'm going to ask you now: did you sleep in your jersey?
No, I did have it right next to me though, so it was a bit sweaty after all that. So yeah, no, I had it there though.
Well, I think the real question actually should be, did you wear the rainbow jersey when you won the Sunday Race Club the following morning from your hotel room?
I should have. I was a bit gutted it wasn't in game, but it was the motel room, far too hot to have any sort of jersey on racing the Sunday Race Club. But yeah, I would have liked to.
Yeah. So when you think about that in-game jersey, you are basically the first community racer to win the Esports World Championship. Ashley Moolman-Pasio won in 20, and Los Adigis won in 22 and 23. And incidentally, they were both offered wildcard selections for the race. Cordially declined them. But is that important to you to be a community racer? Are you looking forward to having that in-game kit and racing alongside your peers that you met in Abu Dhabi and in future editions of the Sunday Race Club, or even on Zwift for that matter as well?
I'm really looking forward to that because I think it shows that, I know these girls are world tour riders, and I think it shows that for ride remote and across the world from Europe and things, there is still the opportunity to do big races and to mean within the cycling space, even though you're not, I guess, on the ground in Europe, and that you still have the opportunity to perform and do well, even from your garage at home. And I think it'll be cool to show that jersey and the hard work that's gone on behind the scenes, and not to get to Abu Dhabi, but also all the racing and the things we put ourselves through week in, week out with weigh-ins and all sorts of stuff, that it's evolved into this, to where it's just going to be pretty cool. I'm very excited to just see it on in game and know that that's me and that's my rider and my character and things.
Yeah, I for one am as well. You certainly earned it, and it'll be nice for you to represent the community there. So of course we were in Abu Dhabi, and I'm curious how you felt about it. Did you enjoy being in the country? Did you enjoy experiencing that culture? Did you ever feel uncomfortable or unsafe? Do you feel that enhanced the experience for you?
I was just floored, even just landing in, I think I landed in Dubai, and just driving out of Dubai, I was just floored by the scale of everything, like coming from New Zealand, like we're pretty small, so just the scale of everything. And then, I felt totally safe the whole time there, and really enjoyed just getting to see everything, and the stage they set up for us, and just the whole atmosphere was just brilliant. Like, we never felt like you didn't know what was going on. You were able to ask people questions. Everyone was really friendly. Like, yeah, it was awesome. Yeah.
Oh, now, Kate, you've mentioned you've had a challenging trip home. Did your trip out go better?
No. Airport and first flight because I was supposed to fly New Zealand to Sydney, and then Sydney to Abu Dhabi, and found out my flight to Sydney was cancelled, and there was no other flights to get me there, connecting flights. So my dad had flown out earlier that morning because we couldn't get the same flight to Sydney, but we got the same one from Sydney to Abu Dhabi. It was just a mad panic. I was trying to contact people at my whoosh, but unfortunately everyone was asleep because opposite sides of the world and things, and I wanted to get there as soon as possible, so I ended up finding a flight direct from Auckland to Dubai instead, and then getting a ride from Dubai to Abu Dhabi. But there was a moment of panic there, because the last thing I wanted was to be more jet lagged than I already was going to be leading into the racing. So both ends of the flight were not ideal, but we got there. So that's the main thing.
And did that put you off your mental game at all in any way? Sort of, some people are a little bit superstitious. Something starts going wrong, or are you not at all like that? Was that just practical, objective? This is an issue. This is a challenge. Let's get it sorted. Crack on.
Yeah, I think no, it didn't faze me too much. I was just happy to get there around the same time my other flight was going to get there. I faced a few challenges throughout the week, but I think Friday afternoon I was just races tomorrow. We're just going to focus on that and forget about everything else until Monday and go from there.
So you mentioned those challenges, and it certainly was an emotional week for you. You were notified that you were annulled from the second Swift World Series race that you won on October 17th by Athlete Analytics. On October 24th, when you're preparing to travel, and there are many people that are already at the event, the commissaires report was released by Zwift. And that stated that you, the rider, experienced a hardware malfunction which led to a material difference between the trainer and power meter for the duration of the race. Now, for context, this commissaires report also cited Michael Kaminski, who represented Poland in the World Championships, and Daniel Churek, who represented the Czech Republic, who also happens to be a pro racer in this annulment report as well. I'm curious, how did that go down? I assume that you were home when you received the news of the annulment. How did you hear the news? What was the tone of the initial email? What steps were you afforded to rectify the situation, if at all?
Yeah, so it was bad timing, really. I received the email as I was boarding my flight to Abu Dhabi, which made things a little difficult in terms of responding initially. I sort of got told that they saw those discrepancies between the power meter and the trainer and things, and I also got told that I exceeded my initial power testing, which I tried to explain to them that I did that 3 months ago. I'm leading into World Championships. I knew I was going to exceed my initial testing data. There was a lot of back and forth between us and them once I landed in Abu Dhabi, data and things like that, because they asked for more data in terms of what I had. I sent them everything I had. And then they said their usual protocol would be to do some retesting. And unfortunately, because I was at the World Championships, I wasn't able to do that because my bike was with me, my trainer was at home. I couldn't, and I was sort of focused on the World Champs. And I think it was it's one thing to annul me and those other riders, but I think it was very unfair in that they chose the dates they chose to release that information was before the World Championships. I think for me and those other boys, it put them in a bit of an awkward position of, well, what are all these people now thinking of us? We haven't had the chance to do any retesting or prove anything and that sort of stuff. And so it kind of tainted the days leading into the World Championships, and that was such a big focus here, but I was trying to focus on the competition itself. Whereas I think they could have waited until Monday if they were going ahead with annulments. It could have come out after, I think. I think it was, that was probably the biggest thing for me, is that they chose to release it the day before racing. And also just not having the opportunity to retest was a bit frustrating, I guess, but it's in their hands. It was their decision. I couldn't really change their mind. So it was what it was.
Yeah, no, it certainly is unfortunate that you had to face that, and you faced it admirably, I must admit. And you're not a racer, right? You're a police officer at home, and your job is to uphold the law with integrity. How did it feel to be, in a way, accused of cheating, essentially? I assume that you have to take an oath and sign an ethics clause. Could it have impacted your job if it came out that you were cheating in a bike race that involved money or other terms?
Yeah, no, I definitely wouldn't. It wouldn't be a good look, and I'm sure I'd be reined into work and into question if that was. But it was just it's that sick feeling in your gut when you hear that sort of thing, and you're being told that you had an unfair advantage and things like that. That's the hard thing to settle with, especially when you know the level you're at, you've given everything, you've done the trainer calibrations, and I guess something didn't work out and things didn't balance, and I understand that completely. Like, if they see that difference there, that's fine, but it's an honor to have that said to you, and that you won a race and you won it unfairly, because there's nothing worse than that. And then my partner Dylan, who coaches me, he's also like, well, that's also, he feels it's a bit of his reputation as well, because he's been at the top level of elite racing, and the last thing he wants to be associated with is any form of unfairness within the sport. And so he was all over the emails as well as me, trying to clear things up. He tried to do testing on the trainer at home with his power pedals and everything like that to show that they were reading correctly as well. But just, it was just that sick feeling of, oh no, and also how do I impacted, I think as well, impacted my ability to sort of get to know the girls that I was going to be racing with on the Saturday, just because like you had this cloud over you, and that you knew maybe they were potentially all talking about it and thinking, well, and also with the fact that I'd won the last 4 Sunday race clubs in a row, and if they had any doubts or questions around me already, and then you add that on top of it without having the chance to sort of prove yourself, it just made things very uncomfortable, I guess.
It's interesting that you mentioned your fiance, because he obviously has a credible reputation in sport. And like I mentioned, I was sitting next to your dad, and the topic came up with, you could tell that it really hurt him. It hurt his feelings that his daughter would basically clear her name for something that wasn't really any fault of her own. And I think that people don't realize that when these things happen, it doesn't only affect the athlete, right? It affects everybody around them also. It's easy to send off one of these reports without much real forethought. There's a lot of real people behind these avatars. I think that connection is still something that we aren't making on many different levels.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was hard because I know my dad really wanted to enjoy himself, and he wanted to see me enjoy the whole event, and it kind of added this level of unnecessary stress and worry leading into the championships and that sort of thing. But I think it also, in some ways, we did have a big chat about it, and it added to the motivation of wanting to really rip into Saturday and show that, hey, this is what I can do, and if you want to question me. The raw data's here now, and I've done it in front of everyone. Heart rate straps on, trainers there. I can't touch. We literally couldn't touch the screens or anything. It was all done backstage. So it to the motivation at the end of the day.
Okay, I am just going to mention for our listeners who don't know your background, you are no stranger to elite level cycling competition. You've took the bronze in the individual time trial at this year's New Zealand Nationals for the 4th time. You were second in the 2021 road race. You've won a huge gravel race earlier on this year as well. And you even spent time with a pro team in Italy on top of your success in cycling esports. So it's not as though you have come from nowhere. And I think that's just really mindful at this point, just to let our listeners know. Now, I'm going to move on because, of course, you knew at the Worlds, all those trainers would be UCI approved. They were all standardised. They were randomly allocated on stage, levelling that playing field and providing that fair standard of competition. And you knew that going in. And I think, Chris, you wrote an article about this, didn't you, that people can find in the Cycling News if they want to catch up on it and give themselves a little bit more background information. But I'm sure that was on the back of your mind coming in terms of the fact that this was going to be a different platform. This was going to be a platform where all of the checks, the balances had been done, and no one could question what you were about to do. Yeah,
I was very excited about that opportunity. I think all of the girls that have been doing really well on the platform, to have that opportunity to really show that this is what we're capable of, this is what we're doing, because there's always that doubt when you are riding at home from your garage or wherever it may be. I think we were all excited to show that these are the numbers we are doing, and we're just as good as any athletes out on the road. It's just our chosen field and our chosen sport. And so it was very cool to do that.
So in the post-race press conference, I asked you if you thought that this was a statement win for you. And much to my surprise, you really leaned into it. And you said, I think I had a point to prove this week after a few things that were out of my control. Did you come into that race determined to clear your name?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I did.
There you go.
Yeah. Kate, you've mentioned the mental game is everything in esports. For a lot of riders, the issues with the flights would have been enough, let alone what has then subsequently rolled out in the final few days. How did that play out in that live setting? Was that psychological element to your performance that, right, I'm here, I'm determined to clear my name, I'm determined I'm going to do this? Did that really play a role in your performance, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I've done a lot of work over the last couple of years, actually, with, my dad calls it that top 2%, just that little bit that I think for me, over my performances throughout the years, I've always sort of had missing. Like I've had plenty of seconds and third places, but that win has always sort of been that. And it's never been my physical abilities. It's been that top 2%. And we've put a lot of work into that. And yeah, it was just sort of when I arrived at the event and I basically headphones went straight on, and I saw a lot of the girls were sort of, and they all do what they do and that sort of thing, but I saw a lot of them were sort of very quickly into kit, and like we had plenty of time backstage and sort of fluttering around and things, and I just sort of, I guess, removed myself a little bit and put my headphones on and did my stretching and all that sort of stuff, and just sort of sat and watched as all the girls sort of did what they did, and they probably all thought, well, she's a bit rude, or you know, just backing off and things, but it was part of that whole mental prep of just, right, this is what I'm here to do, I know what I can do, now let's go do it. And yeah, that mental game, I think, has been key to being able to perform and not get too stressed or overly panicked and things like that, which I very easily could have done, because Gabby was incredible during the finals, and she really put it to me. And I think had I not had done all the work on that top 2%, I wouldn't have normally backed myself for that final hill and making sure that I won that over the top. But after doing all I really backed myself, even though I hadn't won any of those previous hill climbs in that final race. It was a funny thing. I felt very calm leading into the bottom of that hill, and I kind of felt like I had it. And it seems crazy because Gabby had obviously beaten me every other time up that climb, but I just sort of, that headspace, I was in the perfect headspace leading into the bottom of that climb and sort of backed myself. And that's been that mental game is the thing, because it wasn't about who could physically do it. It was about who had the headspace, I think, to really push to that the line, really, yeah.
You know, athletes and sports psychologists call that being in the zone. Were you in the zone at the bottom of that climb?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was, yeah.
It's really interesting that there is a lot of mental preparation and mental rehearsal that you go through to be on that elite level. And one of the real mental aspects of cycling esports is the weigh-in procedure. The procedure for this event, even though it was a live event, the scheduling was different. Can you describe how it was different from what you're accustomed to with Sunday Race Club? And was that a source of stress for you at all?
It wasn't too much of a source of stress for me in that and I think for all the girls, we were quite happy in that we weighed in at 8 a.m. the morning of race day, whereas usually on Sunday Race Club we're an hour and a half before the race. And I think that took a lot of the stress out for all of us, because that meant we could weigh in first thing in the morning, and then you could go and eat, and you could drink, and you could fuel yourself properly for the race at the end of the day. Whereas Sunday Race Club, like for me, I know that there is a little bit of a stress around it in that my race is at 9 p.m. at night, so I'm weighing in at 7:30 p.m. and it's a full day of eating, but you're kind of very conscious of what you're consuming throughout the day to not add extra the procedure was all done really well. 8 o'clock, it was just all of us just lined up in our order of rings and weighed in, and all waited for each other before all going off to breakfast and things like that. And I think it made it pretty stress-free in terms of the timing of it. Yeah, it was quite good.
There was a lot of sauna talk at the Worlds, and I know that there was also a female athlete on the podium that weighed in 5 kilograms less than her semifinal weight. Is that something that raises alarms for you? You know, the weigh-in is obviously a source of a hot debate in the sport. Do you have any ways that you would make it better? Any solutions that you would offer from your point of view?
I didn't realize any other females had gone to that sort of end of the weight. Has obviously always been I've been a bit conscious of, because I think in terms of the esports world, I'm on the heavier side of the girls, because some of them are in the 40 kilo range, which is just mind blowing to me. But that's just them and who they are and how they're built. But I do think there can be some concern in that, because I think when you start promoting or you start saying that I weighed in at this and I did these numbers, there becomes a danger, because then people just associate success in the sport as what you weigh, and that if you're lighter, that's it. You're gonna perform within the racing. But I think when you go to an extreme like that, you can't maintain that performance. I don't think. It's not maintainable, and it's not a good look for athletes coming through the sport, especially young girls who are very impressionable within the space of weight and eating disorders and things as it is. I do think keeping things like what you weigh, and that is probably something you should probably keep more to yourself, not really promote that side of the sport. I know it is an important part of the sport, but I don't think it should be seen as your way into winning within the sport. I don't think that that's healthy. Yeah.
I've struggled with eating and disordered eating myself, and that prompted me to write a series of articles on extreme dieting. I think it was back in 2021, and my writing resulted in the rulebook change for Zwift. It went from a 24-hour to a 2-hour window, and I still contend that the 2-hour window is a very safe way to go, although I acknowledge now that our sport is a worldwide sport, and for us in the US, that works out well for morning races. But for you in New Zealand, or even for Emma in the UK, that doesn't really work out so well. But when you have a live event, that should be solved, right? Everybody's in the same place. We can weigh in at the same time. But then again, there are other logistical challenges that are in place. You have to enter the weight into the game, and there are a million other things going on at that venue. So I was giving it some thought, and I wanted to run this by you. The ITA was at the site, and there was a doping going on, anti-doping testing. If the weigh-in was just sprung on you and you had no idea when it was going to be, kind of like the way the doping is, do you think that would waylay some of those stressors or not encourage the weight cutting or unhealthy habits that happen to manifest themselves?
Yeah, I don't know. I think no matter what way you go about it, everyone's going to find a way to try and be as light as possible leading into weigh-in. So I think no matter whether you put it at the end of the day or the start of the day, people will adjust what they're doing and what they're consuming, and whether they go into saunas or they go for a ride beforehand and things. People will still find a way to try and weigh as light as possible. But I think probably bringing it on riders it could be a good way to go, but it also could result in athletes just not eating leading into racing. They just won't touch any food and drink and stuff, and which could lead to someone collapsing on the bike and things like that. So there's all sorts. I think no matter which way you look at it, there's always going to be some sort of an issue, some people will do what they need to do to make sure that they're as light as possible, and whether it's not eating all day and then trying to race on that, they probably will, because some people will think that that's better than being heavier, like racing empty, and then others will continue to eat and want to perform with fuel on them. But it's just it's probably the hardest thing within the sport is that side of things, because there's just so many ways to go about it, and what the right way is, I don't know. And from a rider perspective, it's hard, because you do want to weigh as light as possible, but you also want to perform, so you kind of have to find that balance of getting it right, and there's a lot of trial and error and things like that. So I don't know what would be the best way forward.
Jason Osborne was asked that same question also after the race, and he said, it's a part of the sport, and he comes from a rowing background, so it's something that he's been doing basically his whole endurance athlete career. And I agree, it's a tough one, and debates like these are what we need to have to kind of find how that's going to work out. And I mentioned the ITA. I assume that you were tested after the race, right? Were you tested before the race as well?
No, just after. Yeah, straight after.
I was in the hotel, and as you were, with all the athletes, and I would go down for breakfast and just park my laptop and then just sit there. And by the time I was done, it was 4 hours later, and I was also eating lunch on the hotel's dime, which worked out really well. But I was kind of polling athletes here and there, and some of them were tested once or twice before the event and then tested after the event as well. Did a little digging. And so when we had Jacob Frazier on, he told us that the in-person World Championships was going to have the most robust anti-doping measures that are ever for a world championship. I did some poking around and got some numbers, and it seems as if there 20 athletes of each gender had been tested. So that's a pretty decent number, and some of them were tested multiple times. So I would say that certainly does fit the mold of most robust. And it's a good way for the sport to go, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was good. I was glad to see all the athletes, especially I think all three of us that podiumed were tested straight after the racing, and I think it was good to have that done. I was definitely happy to have that done as well, because I think that also reassures other athletes as well that you are performing legitimate. So I think to see that we all got tested.
Now let's talk about that race, Kate, or races, should we say, because it may be one race, the World Championships, but there were three components to it, and that first race ultimately made the difference for you. You had 15 minutes to post the fastest time on that 300-meter segment. Now, it took me by surprise, I have to say, because not being funny, but you are known for endurance rather than sprinting. You are known for your time trialing ability riding away from a group. You're not known for your big kick. So you surprised everybody by taking the top time and earning 20 points on stage one, the maximum number of points. Gabby Guerra, who won the silver, was only 14th on that stage and only took 7 points. That difference was really, really crucial when it came down to it. I have a question. Did you target that segment? Did you target stage one? Was it part and parcel of your plan?
No. So stage one took me by surprise completely. I'd done a lot of work in terms of tactics with my partner Dylan, because he's a great sprinter. And he said, you need to be at the back and use that draft. And I was just very fortunate in that I think only me and Lou Bates actually sat off the back of the group. And I think we were the only two that really thought about that draft as being really, really crucial. And I think when we hit that sprint, I don't think I ever hit the front of the group. I think by the time I crossed the line, I was still somewhere in the pack. But because I came off the back of the girls, it gave me the perfect draft, whereas I think Lou touched a bit of wind there. She got through a bit faster than I did, so she probably had better pure power to weight numbers coming through that sprint than I did, because I have had a little bit of a look at the numbers that we were able to see on the results page, and I definitely was not, in terms of pure watts or power to weight, I wasn't anywhere near the best, but I think I timed it really well. It took me by surprise. I backed myself for inside that top 10, but definitely not first. So yeah, I was very wrapped with that. It gave me a bit of confidence going forward to get that, yeah.
And I love that, because you are quite right, because, in terms of those numbers, we constantly talk about being in position for the sprint and getting your positioning right and utilising that draft. And actually, the rider in 7th place on that table put out the most number of watts per kilo through that sprint segment. But the positioning, absolutely key. And you and Lou Bates were off the back and made that pay.
So then you had that buffer going into race 2, the strategist, which was the 9-kilometer circuit with that 4-minute climb in the middle. And I would assume that you probably said to yourself, this is my sweet spot, right? This is where I'm going to rise to the top of this championship. Is that the mindset that you had? And then it seemed like you took control of them as soon as you got through the first sprint segment at the base of the climb.
Yeah, so I basically ignored the fact that there was that sprint segment at the bottom of the climb. That wasn't a target for me. I was happy if I was mid-bunch coming through that, because I knew that a lot of the girls were going to put a lot of effort into that, and that would cause a bit of fatigue coming through. And I used that as a point to launch straight off the back of them. And I did that, and I think Gabby was the only one that was able to sort of follow. But I'd say she probably knew that was probably what I was going to do. Just based on the racing I've done with her over the last few weeks, I'm sure she had an idea that was probably what I was going to do. And then, yeah, she just rode amazingly up that climb. She timed it well. I think I probably put a little bit too much gas on at the bottom, which caused me a bit of fatigue towards the top. But then for me, I would have liked the climb to be 10 minutes, sort of 4 or 5. The duration of it probably wasn't quite long enough to be perfect for me, but I knew that was probably the best segment out of the whole 3 races. I really put some points on the board. And then just rolling through to the finish. And I think tactically I made some errors rolling into the finish. I found that I was overextending myself over the hill, which then led me into the front going into the next climb, which then gave Gabby the draft coming up into the climb, and I was constantly on the back foot rolling through to the finish, and then she got the jump on me at the end. And big ups to her. She did so well in that stage. I think it was that stage was definitely my biggest target in the race, and that helped in getting at the top.
And it was so close going into that final lap on stage 3. You'd had the 3 previous laps, and then it was double points on that final lap. And pretty much there were still 5 riders in contention at that point, and you could have finished anywhere on that podium. What was going through your mind at that time?
Yeah, it was a funny one, because I was sort of all 3 laps prior to that, I was I think I was 4th, 3rd, and then I think, was I 2nd or 3rd? I don't know if I was 2nd or 3rd, the second to last lap. And I could see that it was double points, and I knew that if over the top there in the last lap, that based on the count back, she would have taken the win. But I knew that my endurance is where my biggest skill set is in racing, and that if you ask me to do those high power numbers, I sort of struggle with that top end. But if you ask me to repeat the same effort over and over and over again, I know I can back up those numbers repeatedly. And so I knew that coming into that second to last lap, the girls had all sort of dropped off a little bit. Everyone was starting to sort of, power wasn't quite the same, and I was sort of coming up through the numbers and the placings in each lap. And so I sort of, that last lap, I felt very calm going into the bottom of the hill. I just thought I need to be on Gabby's wheel up until about 150 to go. 150 to go really kicks steep. It, like you almost have to put your weight into it. And I knew that Gabby's quite light at the moment, and that I'd probably have the raw watts in that steep segment to just really stomp on those pedals to get over that little steep kick. And I just decided, that was the point where I was going to go. So I had to be patient leading into the bottom of that and sit on a wheel. And then just from there, the launch, it was everything I had from that steep kick to the line. So it was good to get it and secure it that way. I think it made for an exciting race. But the performances from the girls was amazing. And for me, I would have liked probably one more lap. Because then I think I would have won that confidently if it was one more lap because of that endurance. But the 4 laps made it a tricky race, but I think it made it an exciting race. So
it certainly was an exciting race. Were you confident when you crossed the line that you had done enough to win the title?
Yes, yeah. Because I knew that there was only, I think there was 2 points between me and Gabby, and I knew that as long as I crossed the line first, there was no one was going to be able to surpass me, because that was the 40 points on the line. So I knew that I just had to win the final time up the hill, and luckily, I managed that. So it's good.
No, you certainly did. And I noticed after the win that you were scanning the crowd, said that you were indeed the winner of the Rainbow Stripes. Who were you looking for?
My dad, of course. I couldn't see him. The lights were quite bright, so I had to sort of cover my eyes to figure out where he was, and then I heard him yell out. So he was the first person I was looking for.
Oh, what did he say to you, Kate?
He was just very proud, I think. He just he was very, very, very happy. He was I don't even remember what he said, to be honest. I don't remember a lot of what anyone said after that. I was just just so happy. I didn't sleep much that night. It was just I think I was still awake at like 4 a.m, so it's just
I write a lot of articles on cycling esports, and for the bigger publications like Cycling News and Cycling, and the comments section are full of people saying it's fake bike racing, it's not real bike racing, and obviously after speaking to you, it's real. Where does this achievement rank for you, athletically, professionally, personally? Where do you put this on your Mount Rushmore of Kate McCarthy best moments?
This is top of the board. This is the biggest thing I've done, I think, for me. And I mean, as a rider, and I'm sure all riders see it, like the Road Worlds and things like that, people putting on that rainbow jersey, and I think no matter what form of cycling you get the opportunity to put on one of those, it's huge. It's something you can only dream about. And like for me, at the beginning of this year, I was looking at I sort of told a few people I was looking at giving away the sport, and then to suddenly 8 months later be wearing a rainbow jersey on a podium in Abu Dhabi is pretty just crazy.
It is indeed. Looking back now, and we're not that far post-event, but looking back, how was the overall experience, Kate? Do you feel you were set up to succeed as an athlete?
Yes, I do actually. The way in which the team there at My Whoosh and everyone around there helping really set it up for all of us athletes to feel that we were in a good environment, that if you needed something or you needed a hand with something, everything was there for you to, and if something went wrong, they were straight on it. There was quick responses, they were welcoming and things like that, and they set you up on the bike. They gave you the opportunity to really have a look at your bike and things like that before racing, and I think that all made for everyone to be able to just focus on the racing, and that stress sort of was taken out of it, which was really nice. But the overall experience was just crazy. I think walking into the arena the morning of, when we got to do a warm training ride, like just to do a few openers and things like that, like that was when I felt really nervous. I was like, wow, this is going to be big. And it was good to get that out of the system and things like that, and they allowed for those opportunities for you to sort of soak it in and then look to the event that night and things like that, and it just all made for I think everyone to be able to perform at their best on the night.
So you are going to have that rainbow jersey for the next 12 months. And I can't believe I'm going to ask you this question. Are you going to be back to defend your title?
I hope so.
Are you excited to defend your title?
I think that'll be a whole different level of, I don't know if I want to say pressure, but like a whole different level of racing because I've never had that opportunity to defend a title. So I think that'll to the training and the prep and the focus and all that. So yeah, I think that'd be very cool to have the opportunity to do that.
You're the only one that has that jersey. You'll have that for the next 12 months, as Emma mentioned. So it's basically priceless, right? You're the only one that has it. Do you have any plans to take the value out of that jersey, leverage it for sponsorships or anything else to promote yourself, promote the sport? We're constantly debating about whether the rainbow jersey has a value in cycling esports. And I wonder if you've given that any thought at all.
I have given a little bit of thought. Like, I'd love any opportunities to work with anyone that'd be open to working with me. But yeah, I think it's definitely huge in promoting the esports cycling. I think it's a space that's constantly growing, and it's only just in its beginning stages, really, because this is the first live event. And then I think for what's to come is going to be awesome, and I do want to be a part of that space. And I think having that rainbow jersey opens opportunities to continue to work in that space and be a valuable part of that space, and I hope to do that. But yeah, I haven't really had time to process what it all means and if it gives me a platform or anything like that, because I almost probably need to find someone to give me some advice around it all and what I can do with it, because it wasn't ever an afterthought of winning. You're so focused on the win that you don't really think of what's to come after it and what it all means. So still in the process of working that out. Yeah.
Finally, Kate, what's the one memory from this event that will stay with you long after everything else sort of fades? What's the one thing that you think will stay with you?
Just spotting my dad. That was huge for me, because he's been a huge part of this whole journey for me, and like I feel myself getting emotional about it now, but my family's been massive and supporting me over the last few years, like to win that, and then for them to, I guess, watch at home and that sort of thing, and then to be able to give my dad a hug at the end of it was just huge, because he's been a huge part of it. And like my uncle also, I got videos sent of my uncle and he's bawling his eyes out after the racing when he watched it and things like that, and they've all been there through all of it and all the sort of successes, but also mostly the failure, not failures, but close calls and that sort of thing. So just being able to have my dad there and share that with him was probably something that's going to stay with me for a while.
You're a great champion, Kate, and we appreciate you coming on with us. It means a lot, and we're spending some time with you in Abu Dhabi next year, and hopefully on your campaign to repeat.
Thank you for having me. It's been nice to talk to you guys.
It's been absolutely fabulous, Kate, and thank you so much. And in fact, you know what? When we opened in Abu Dhabi on Saturday, my co-host and I talked about firsts. And we talked about it was a first because it was a moment in history, because it was the first live World Championships cycling esports where everyone was on the stage behind us, and they were indeed behind us. And apologies for having my back to you for the whole race. But, and legitimately, the women went first. So you are the first cycling esports world champion at a live event, full stop. And it's just the smile on your face is fabulous, and it's just what we have to say. Chris and I, thank you so much for joining us, the 2024 UCI Cycling Esports World Champion. That is Kate McCarthy. Well, you can subscribe to the Virtual Velo Podcast on your favourite podcast provider or on YouTube. You can follow me, Emma Martin, on Instagram at biking_Emma. You can also head over to the Communique and sign up for the bi-monthly newsletter. We have some more impactful guests coming from the world of cycling esports on soon. It's not going to be long until we record the next episode of the Virtual Velo Podcast. We have indeed Project Echelon's Eric Hill to announce plans for the Echelon Racing League and the 2025 USA Cycling Esports National Championships on MyWhoosh, and Dr. George Gilbert to discuss Training Peaks' acquisition of Indy Velo. So lots to talk about. A big thanks to Kate McCarthy and to her dad, because it's lovely to meet the members of the family, and I think it's also mindful to remind that there is a big team behind every single racer in that esports community. Until we are back, stay safe, enjoy your riding. We'll see you again soon. Goodbye.